Welcome, everyone, to the BookMind channel. This is where we take a really deep dive conversation into famous English books, the ones that have, really shaped how we think, especially in areas like business and communication.
It's great to be here. We're ready to dig into a text that honestly fundamentally changed the game for interacting with people.
Yeah, it really did.
Today, we're immersing ourselves in Dale Carnegie's 1936 masterpiece, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Absolutely. Now, this book, it's everywhere, isn't it? On every self-help list, every leadership reading list. But often I think people just skim the surface. They see the titles, the principles.
Like a collection of quick tricks, maybe.
Exactly, like quaint little tricks. Our mission today is to go deeper. This isn't just about tips. It's a profound look at practical human psychology. It's all about effective communication, building real, positive relationships, and influencing others. And this is key, without being manipulative.
That's a critical distinction.
Totally. We want to pull out those core ideas about human nature that are just as relevant, maybe even more relevant today than they were back in 1936.
The reason this book has lasted so long, why it's still so powerful, it hinges on one core idea. It's simple to say, but actually quite difficult to practice consistently. It requires a fundamental shift in focus, away from yourself, away from your own ego, and entirely onto the other person. Carnegie lays it out perfectly in his central thesis. He basically says, you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming genuinely interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get people interested in you.
Wow, that hits hard, doesn't it? Shifting from me to you, that's the unlock. So let's unpack that. Where do we start? Carnegie begins with what he calls the fundamentals of handling people.
Right, the bedrock principles.
Okay, so the very first principle tackles probably the most common mistake we all make, especially under pressure. Principle 1, don't criticize, condemn, or complain.
Yeah, and there's a reason it's first. Carnegie argues, and I think experience bears this out, that criticism is almost guaranteed to backfire.
How so?
Well, think about it. When you criticize someone, what's their immediate reaction? They get defensive. It doesn't matter if you're factually correct or have the best intentions. You've essentially attacked their pride, their sense of self-worth.
Right, you put them on the back foot immediately.
Exactly. And once that ego is bruised, their mind just slams shut. They aren't hearing your brilliant feedback anymore. They're just feeling attacked, maybe resentful, and probably busy justifying their original action in their head.
And resentment is the absolute opposite of influence, isn't it? You can't influence someone who resents you.
Precisely. The book gives some great historical examples. The one about Abraham Lincoln is fascinating. Apparently, early in his career, he was pretty quick to criticize his opponents publicly. He even wrote these really harsh, anonymous letters and articles.
Oh, I didn't know that side of Lincoln.
Yeah, he was apparently quite the sharp-tongued writer. But it caused him trouble. There was this one incident where he attacked a politician named James Shields so harshly in print. Well, it nearly led to a duel. A literal duel.
Wow. So that near-death experience kind of taught him a lesson.
Seems like it. A very harsh lesson about the dangers of public condemnation. He apparently shifted his approach entirely after that. There's another famous story. Later, during the Civil War, it really shows how he wrestled with this.
Were you talking about Gettysburg? After the battle?
That's the one. Yeah. General Meade had won the battle, a huge victory, but then he let Lee's army escape. Lincoln was, understandably, furious. He saw it as a missed chance to potentially end the war right then and there.
Yeah, the stakes couldn't have been higher.
Right. So Lincoln sits down and writes this absolutely scorching letter to Meade, detailing all his failures, really condemning him. And this is the crucial part, he never sent it.
He wrote it, but didn't send it. Why?
Carnegie suggests Lincoln realized, even in his righteous anger, that sending that criticism wouldn't actually help. It wouldn't make Meade a better general overnight. It would likely just crush his spirit, make him defensive, maybe even make him want to resign.
So even when he was right, objectively right, he chose not to criticize because it wouldn't achieve his ultimate goal.
Exactly. He recognized the counterproductivity of it. The alternative, Carnegie says, is to try and understand why the other person acted as they did. Look for the reasons, the context, instead of just placing blame.
Shifting from blame to understanding, that's a big mental leap.
It is, and it leads naturally to the second principle, which is sort of the positive flip side of avoiding criticism. Give honest and sincere appreciation.
Yes. This taps right into that deep human need we all have, doesn't it? What William James called the deepest principle in human nature, that craving to be appreciated.
Precisely. If criticism pushes people away, sincere appreciation pulls them in. It's a far more powerful motivator. But Carnegie is very clear here. This isn't about empty flattery.
Like, there's a huge difference.
Huge. Flattery is insincere, it's manipulative, it's usually obvious, and people resent it. Genuine appreciation, on the other hand, comes from actually noticing something positive, real effort, a specific skill, an improvement, a contribution. It has to be honest.
And, in today's world, maybe especially in corporate settings with all the structured feedback and sometimes forced positivity, real sincere appreciation feels even more rare.
That makes it even more impactful when it does happen.
Yeah. Like, instead of just saying, good job, pointing out something specific, hey, I really noticed how you handled that difficult client. You stayed calm, you listened, you found a solution. That was impressive. That lands differently.
Absolutely. Specificity makes it feel real. It shows you were actually paying attention. Okay, so if we avoid criticism and we offer genuine appreciation, how do we actually get someone to do something? That brings us to principle 3.
Which is?
Arouse in the other person an eager want.
Okay, this one feels really fundamental to influence. It's about shifting perspective again, isn't it? Stop thinking about what I want.
Exactly. We're all wired to be primarily interested in our own needs, our own desires, our own problems. That's just human nature. So if you approach someone focused only on your agenda, I need you to do this, I want this sale, my deadline is, you're likely going to meet resistance, or at best, grudging compliance.
Because you haven't answered their internal question. What's in it for me?
Precisely. Carnegie forces you to put yourself in their shoes. You have to frame your request, your proposal, whatever it is, in terms of their interests, their desires, their goals. What will they gain? How does this help them solve their problem or satisfy their need?
It connects to basic psychology, right?
Yeah.
People act based on their own motivations.
Absolutely. Even before things like Maslow's hierarchy were formally laid out, Carnegie understood this intuitively. People are driven by needs, security, recognition, belonging, achievement. You need to tap into that.
The book gives an example, I think, about asking an employee to stay late.
Right. Instead of just ordering them, you need to stay late to finish this report, which feels like a burden.
You frame it differently.
You frame it in terms of their benefit. Maybe something like, finishing this report tonight is critical for the project's success. Handling this final piece will give you great visibility with the leadership team, which I know is something you're aiming for in your development.
Ah, so you're connecting the task to their ambition, their eager want for advancement or recognition.
Exactly. Suddenly, it's not just a demand from the boss, it's an opportunity for them. So these first 3 principles together: don't criticize, do appreciate sincerely, and always think about the other person's wants. They lay the essential groundwork. It's about cultivating empathy.
Okay, so if part 1 sets the internal mindset, part 2 feels much more practical. It's like, here are the specific things you can do. Carnegie calls it 6 ways to make people instantly like you. Sounds a bit like a magic formula.
Well, maybe not magic, but they are surprisingly high-impact habits, and they build directly on that foundation of focusing on the other person. Let's actually group the first and fourth principles together because they're so closely related.
Okay, which are?
Become genuinely interested in other people and be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves.
Yeah, those definitely go hand in hand. One is the internal state, genuine interest, and the other is the action listening well.
Exactly. And demonstrating that genuine interest through active listening is probably the highest compliment you can pay someone. Think about it in our hyper-distracted world.
Oh, totally. Phones buzzing, notifications popping up.
Right. When someone actually puts their distractions away, looks you in the eye, and truly listens to what you're saying, asking thoughtful follow-up questions, not interrupting, how does that make you feel?
Valued, important, heard.
Absolutely. It builds trust almost instantly. Carnegie nails it when he says encourage others to talk about themselves. People love to talk about their experiences, their interests, their problems. Giving them the floor is incredibly magnetic.
It's rare. And because it's rare, it's powerful. Okay, so genuine interest and active listening. What's next on the list of simple but powerful habits?
This one might sound almost trivial, but don't underestimate it. Smile.
Smile.
Just smile. But again, sincerity is key. Not a forced fake grin, but a genuine smile that comes from a place of warmth and openness. It's a universal signal of goodwill.
It's true, isn't it? A real smile is disarming. It makes someone seem approachable, friendly. It kind of lowers defenses before you even say a word.
Neurologically, it even triggers mirror neurons in the other person. They often can't help but feel a little warmer, maybe even smile back subconsciously. It sets a positive tone instantly.
Simple but effective.
Yep.
Okay, what's principle 3?
This one requires a bit more conscious effort, but the payoff is huge. Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language.
The name thing. This is a big one. I know I feel a little jolt of positive recognition when someone I haven't seen in a while remembers my name.
Exactly. It's incredibly personal. Using someone's name shows you see them as an individual, not just, another face in the crowd. It conveys respect and personal connection.
It takes effort, though,
Yeah.
especially if you meet a lot of people.
It does. But Carnegie points out that leaders throughout history, like FDR, apparently made a real point of practicing this, understanding its power to build rapport and goodwill. It's a way of conferring value without spending a dime.
That makes sense. Okay, so genuine interest, listening, smiling, using names. What's principle 5?
Talk in terms of the other person's interests.
Okay, this flows directly from the listening part, right? If you're genuinely listening, you'll discover what their interests are.
Precisely. The idea is to consciously steer the conversation towards topics they are passionate about, not just defaulting to your own favorite subjects or your own agenda.
So even if I know nothing about, say, competitive dog grooming.
Right. If that's what they're excited about, you ask them about it. Wow, tell me more about that. How did you get into it? You're showing that their world, their passions are interesting and valuable to you simply because they're valuable to them.
It's another way of showing respect and making them feel seen.
Exactly. Which leads us perfectly into the final principle of this section, number 6, which kind of sums it all up and connects back to that core human need. Make the other person feel important and do it sincerely.
This feels like the culmination of all the previous points.
It really is. It's about actively looking for ways to acknowledge the other person's value, their expertise, their contribution. In a work context, it might be asking for their opinion on something you know they're knowledgeable about, or publicly recognizing a job well done.
It's the opposite of making someone feel small or insignificant.
Right. And again, that word sincerely is doing heavy lifting. People can smell insincere flattery or manipulation a mile off. This has to come from a genuine place of recognizing their worth. When you do that, Carnegie says, the response is almost always warmth and a stronger connection, because you've touched that deep craving to be appreciated.
So these 6 ways, they aren't really tricks at all. They're habits of showing genuine respect and attention.
That's exactly it. Simple acts consistently applied with genuine intent.
All right, let's move into part 3. This section feels like it's getting into the more complex territory of persuasion and handling disagreements. Winning people to your way of thinking. This is where things can get tricky, maybe even feel a bit manipulative if not done right.
That's definitely the risk, and why Carnegie's approach is so focused on respect and avoiding conflict. It starts with 2 principles that seem almost paradoxical if your goal is to win.
Okay, what are they?
Principle 1, the only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it. And principle 2, show respect for the other person's opinions. Never say you're wrong.
Avoid arguments. But how do you persuade someone if you avoid arguing and never say you're wrong, even if they are wrong?
Yeah, it sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? But think about what happens in a typical argument. Voices get raised, egos get involved, positions harden.
Nobody really listens. They just reload their own points.
Yeah. Exactly. Even if you manage to dismantle their points with logic and facts, even if you technically win the argument, what have you really achieved? You've likely made the other person feel defensive, maybe embarrassed, or certainly resentful. You haven't won them over, you've pushed them away.
So you win the battle but lose the war, basically.
That's a good way to put it. The long-term relationship is damaged. So Carnegie says, avoid the argument itself. And crucial to that is how you handle disagreement. Directly saying you're wrong is like throwing gasoline on a fire. It's a direct attack on their judgment and ego.
So what do you do instead if you genuinely disagree?
You soften it. You use diplomacy. Instead of a flat contradiction, maybe try something like, that's an interesting perspective. The way I've been looking at it based on this data is slightly different. Or, I could be mistaken here, I often am. But my understanding was. You show respect for their viewpoint even while introducing an alternative.
It keeps the door open for discussion rather than slamming it shut with a, you're wrong.
Precisely. It prevents that immediate defensiveness. And this ties into the next principle, which requires real humility. Principle 3. If you are wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically.
Owning your own mistakes.
Yeah.
That's not always easy, especially when pride is involved.
It's not. But think about the effect. If you readily admit, you know what, you're absolutely right, I messed that up, or my mistake, I didn't consider that factor, what happens?
Well, it kind of takes the wind out of the other person's sails if they're about to criticize you.
Exactly. It disarms them instantly. There's nothing left to argue about on that point. Plus, it shows you have integrity, you're objective, you're not afraid to be wrong. Paradoxically, it often builds more respect than trying to bluff your way through or cover up an error.
That's a really interesting point. Okay, so avoid arguments, respect opinions, admit your own errors. What about proactively building agreement?
Right, Carnegie offers techniques for that too. Principle 4 is simple but crucial. Begin in a friendly way.
Set a positive tone from the start.
Yes. No matter how contentious the topic might be, starting with warmth, maybe finding some small point of agreement or shared experience first, it just lowers the tension. It signals you see them as a collaborator, not an opponent.
Makes sense. And then there's principle 5. Get the other person saying yes, yes immediately. This sounds a bit like a sales technique.
It can be seen that way, but the psychology is sound. It's often called the Socratic method. The idea is to start by asking questions or making statements about things you know you both agree on. Small things, maybe obvious things.
Why? What does that do?
It creates a positive momentum. The person gets into a pattern of agreement, saying yes. Psychologically, it becomes slightly easier for them to continue saying yes when you get to the more substantive point you actually want to discuss. You're building a pathway of agreement rather than starting with a point of conflict.
Guiding them towards a shared conclusion.
Okay.
Now, what are the actual flow of the conversation during persuasion?
This is where principles 6 and 7 come in, and they're really about empowering the other person. Let the other person do a great deal of the talking, and let the other person feel that the idea is his or hers.
Let them talk more, and let them think it was their idea. How does that help me persuade them?
Because people are far more committed to ideas they feel they originated or contributed to significantly. If you just lecture them with your brilliant plan, they might nod along, but they don't have any ownership.
But if they talk through the problem, maybe raise objections you help them solve, and then they articulate the solution themselves.
And they own it, they'll champion it, they'll defend it, because it feels like their creation. Your role shifts from being the seller of the idea to being the facilitator who helps them discover it. Plus, by listening more, you genuinely understand their perspective and concerns better.
So it's less about imposing your view and more about collaborative discovery, guided by you.
That's a great way to frame it. And underpinning all of this is deep empathy, covered in principles 8 and 9. Try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view, and be sympathetic with the other person's ideas and desires.
Really putting yourself in their shoes.
Truly. Not just intellectually understanding their argument, but trying to feel the emotions behind it. Why do they believe this? What need or fear is driving their position? Carnegie even suggests using phrases like, I don't blame you one bit for feeling as you do. If I were in your shoes, I'd probably feel the same way.
Wow, that's powerful. Saying something like that must really diffuse tension.
It does. It validates their feelings, even if you don't agree with their conclusion. It shows you're not dismissing them. It's very hard to remain hostile towards someone who genuinely expresses sympathy for your position.
Okay, so we've covered avoiding conflict, building agreement, empowering the other person, and showing empathy. Are there any more advanced techniques?
Yes. The last few principles in this section get into slightly more sophisticated appeals. Principle 10 is appeal to the nobler motives.
What does that mean?
It means assuming the best about the other person's character, even if their actions suggest otherwise. Most people want to see themselves and be seen by others as fair, honest, ethical, kind. So you appeal to that self-image.
Give me an example.
Okay, say you think a vendor overcharged you, perhaps intentionally. Instead of accusing them, you cheated me, you might say, I know your company prides itself on its integrity and fairness, so I was surprised by this charge on the invoice. Could we look at it together? There might just be a misunderstanding. You're appealing to their noble motive of being fair and giving them a chance to live up to it.
You're giving them an honorable way to correct the mistake. Interesting.
Then, principles 11 and 12 are about making your ideas stick. Dramatize your ideas and throw down a challenge.
Dramatize, like put on a play.
Not quite. More like make your ideas vivid and memorable. People don't respond well to just dry facts and figures. Use stories, analogies, demonstrations, compelling visuals, anything that brings your point to life and engages their emotions or imagination.
Make it concrete, not abstract.
Exactly. And finally, throw down a challenge. This taps into people's competitive spirit, their desire to achieve, to prove themselves, especially with high performers. Framing something as a challenge, I wonder if we could beat last quarter's record, or this is a tough problem, I'm not sure who can crack it, can be incredibly motivating. Not in an aggressive way, but to spur effort and engagement.
Right. It ignites that desire for significance and mastery. So part 3 is really a masterclass in persuasive communication that prioritizes relationship and avoids ego battles.
Okay, we've covered the foundations, connecting with people, persuading them. Now, the final major section, part 4, seems laser-focused on leadership. Specifically, how to change people's behavior or correct mistakes without causing resentment. This feels like the real high-wire act. It absolutely is. This is where all the previous principles need to come together with exceptional skill and sincerity. And fittingly, it starts right back at appreciation and humility. Let's look at the first 3 principles here together. Begin with praise and honest appreciation. Call attention to people's mistakes indirectly. And talk about your own mistakes before criticizing the other person.
The praise sandwich approach, but maybe more nuanced.
More nuanced, yes. And the sincerity is paramount. Starting with genuine praise for something the person does well isn't just about softening the blow, it's about affirming their overall value before addressing a specific issue. It frames the feedback within a context of respect. John, you're incredibly reliable and your attention to detail is usually spot on.
Which is why I was a bit surprised by this oversight in the report. Something like that.
Kind of, but Carnegie actually suggests being even more indirect with the criticism itself. That's principle 2. Instead of using but, which tends to negate the praise that came before it.
Right, everyone just waits for the but.
Exactly. He suggests using and. So maybe, John, your attention to detail is usually spot on, and if we could just add a bit more supporting data to this section, this report would be absolutely perfect. See the difference?
It shifts the focus from here's your mistake to here's how we make this even better. It's collaborative, less accusatory.
Precisely. It preserves dignity. And then, principle 3 adds another layer of humility. Talk about your own past mistakes before pointing out theirs.
How does that work?
It makes the feedback feel less like a judgment from on high and more like shared experience. You know, I remember struggling with that exact same issue when I first started using the software. What really helped me was creating a checklist. It makes you relatable, shows vulnerability, and frames the mistake as a common, correctable error, not a personal failing.
That really lowers the defensiveness. I could see that. Okay, so that's about delivering feedback. What about directing people or getting them to change course?
That leads to principles 4 and 5. Ask questions instead of giving direct orders and let the other person save face.
Asking questions instead of giving orders. Why is that more effective?
Think about how it feels to be ordered around versus being consulted. Direct orders can feel dictatorial, especially to experienced professionals. They often invite passive resistance or just bare minimum compliance.
Whereas asking questions
Engages their thinking. Instead of reschedule this meeting, try, given the project deadline, do you think moving the meeting to Thursday would give everyone enough time to prepare? It invites them to consider the problem, maybe suggest alternatives, and ultimately feel some ownership over the decision. It fosters cooperation, not just obedience.
It respects their intelligence and autonomy.
Exactly. And closely related is principle 5. Let the other person save face. This is non-negotiable for effective leadership. Never, ever humiliate someone, especially publicly. Even if a major mistake was made, even if someone is being let go, preserving their dignity is crucial.
Why is that so important, especially if, say, they're leaving the company anyway?
Because how you treat people, even in difficult situations, defines your reputation as a leader and impacts the morale and trust of everyone who remains. Humiliating someone creates fear and resentment that ripples outwards. Protecting their self-respect, even when delivering bad news, maintains a level of mutual respect.
That's a powerful long-term perspective. Okay, so we're correcting tactfully, guiding with questions, protecting dignity. How do we actively inspire improvement and excellence?
That's where the focus shifts firmly back to positive reinforcement. Principle 6 is praise the slightest improvement and praise every improvement. Be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise.
So notice and acknowledge the small wins, not just the big final result.
Yes, catch people doing something right, especially when they're trying to improve on a weakness. Consistent, sincere praise for effort and progress builds confidence and reinforces the desired behavior far more effectively than constantly harping on faults. It makes people want to keep getting better.
It fuels motivation rather than fear.
Precisely. And principle 7 builds on this. Give the other person a fine reputation to live up to.
What does that look like in practice?
It's about expressing positive expectations. Instead of saying, don't mess this up, You might say, I know I can count on your analytical skills for this complex task. Or, you have a real talent for connecting with clients. I'm sure you'll handle this meeting brilliantly.
You're setting a high bar based on their perceived strengths or potential.
Exactly. It taps into what's sometimes called the Pygmalion effect. People tend to rise to the expectations set for them. You're giving them a positive image to embody, motivating them to fulfill that reputation.
That's really about believing in people's potential.
It is. Which brings us to the final two principles for leaders. Use encouragement. Make the fault seem easy to correct, and make the other person happy about doing the thing you suggest.
Make the fault seem easy to correct.
By framing it as a manageable skill gap or a habit to adjust, rather than an ingrained character flaw, focus on their ability to overcome it. This is something lots of people find tricky at first, but with a bit of practice, I'm confident you'll master it. You're minimizing the obstacle and maximizing their perceived capacity to handle it. It replaces discouragement with hope.
And the final one. Make them happy about doing what you suggest. How on earth do you do that?
It's the culmination of everything else. If you've treated them with respect, praised their strengths, involved them in decisions, protected their dignity, appealed to their interests and noble motives, then they want to cooperate. They feel valued, understood, and part of a team working towards a shared goal. Doing what you suggest feels aligned with their own sense of worth and purpose. It's not about manipulation. It's about creating an environment where cooperation is the natural, positive outcome.
So true leadership, according to Carnegie, isn't about command and control. It's about empathy, encouragement, and making people feel genuinely valued.
That's the essence of it. It's influence through positive connection. Hashtag conclusion and key takeaways.
Wow. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground, from fundamental mindset shifts to specific tactics for connection, persuasion, and leadership. Looking back across all four parts, the core message feels incredibly consistent, doesn't it?
It really does. Despite being written almost a century ago, the central theme holds remarkably true. It all comes back to understanding basic human nature. People aren't primarily driven by logic, but by emotion. They crave recognition, respect, appreciation.
And true influence, the kind that lasts, doesn't come from dominating or outsmarting people. It comes from genuinely understanding and honoring those emotional needs.
Exactly. It requires a deliberate shift away from self-focus. It demands kindness, empathy, and that genuine interest in the other person we talked about right at the start. It's not about using people. It's about building authentic connections where positive influence is a natural byproduct.
So if we had to distill the biggest takeaways.
Well, first, that core driver. People are motivated by feeling important, respected, and appreciated. Tapping into that is key. Second, effective communication and leadership mean focusing relentlessly on the other person's perspective, their interests, their strengths. And third, maybe the most practical takeaway, is that huge results often come from small, consistent habits. Things that seem almost trivial, like genuinely listening, smiling, using someone's name correctly, admitting when you're wrong quickly. These seemingly minor acts are actually the building blocks of strong relationships and real influence.
It all circles back to that quote you mentioned earlier from William James. The deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated. Carnegie essentially just gave us a practical, step-by-step guide on how to ethically and effectively satisfy that craving in our interactions.
You could say the whole book is really a manual for becoming a more empathetic, positive, and ultimately more effective human being in any social or professional context. It's about positive psychology leading to positive outcomes.
A truly timeless message. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Dale Carnegie's classic here on the BookMind channel.
It was a pleasure. Hopefully, these principles offer some valuable tools for anyone looking to improve their relationships, their leadership, and just their overall connection with people.
If you found this conversation valuable, we'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It helps us bring more deep dives like this to you.
And before we sign off, we've got a question for you to think about based on today's discussion. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.
Yeah, let us know what you think.
Considering all the principles we talked about, especially those for leaders needing to correct mistakes or change behavior, things like praising first, calling attention indirectly, admitting your own faults, which one of those do you think is the hardest to apply sincerely and consistently, especially in a really high-stakes, fast-paced, professional environment?
That's a tough one. Which principle feels the most challenging in the real world?
Let us know your perspective in the comments. Thanks for listening.